There is a tower sitting in the middle of one of the world's most visited cities. It costs millions of dollars every single year just to maintain. It was almost torn down twice. And today, it generates over $2 billion annually for a country that originally called it an embarrassment. Here is the part nobody talks about. The same structure that was considered an eyesore, a mistake, a blight on a city's identity, is now the reason millions of people book flights, change careers, and rethink what they thought they knew about beauty, failure, and value. And if you stay with this until the end, what you learn about this tower is going to say something uncomfortable about the choices you have been putting off. The Eiffel Tower was built for a single event. The 1889 World's Fair in Paris. That was it. One exhibition. 20 years of permitted existence, then scheduled for demolition. Gustave Eiffel himself had a temporary lease on the land. When the fair ended, the critics were already sharpening their knives. Writers and artists in Paris publicly called it a disgrace. One of them described it as a giant black factory chimney humiliating the city. Newspapers published letters demanding it be dismantled before it permanently scarred the skyline. So how does a structure the entire cultural class of a nation despised become the single most visited paid monument on the planet? That question has an answer. And it changes everything. The tower survived its demolition deadline for one reason that had nothing to do with beauty. It was useful. Engineers discovered it made an excellent radio transmission antenna. France needed it for military communication during the First World War. The Eiffel Tower was not saved because people changed their minds about how it looked. It was saved because it served a function nobody anticipated when it was built. Sit with that for a second. Something dismissed, mocked, considered a temporary mistake, survived because it quietly became essential while its critics were still arguing about its appearance. By the 1960s, tourism around the tower had grown into something the French government could no longer ignore. Visitor numbers were climbing past 2 million annually. By the 1980s, they repainted it, renovated the elevators, added lighting. They were no longer tolerating the tower. They were investing in it. Because it was no longer a cost. It had become a machine. Today the Eiffel Tower generates somewhere between $2 and $2.5 billion per year for the Parisian economy when you count hotels, restaurants, retail, and tourism infrastructure built around it. The tower itself pulls in around €100 million annually in direct ticket revenue alone. Over 300 million people have visited it since 1889. It is not a monument to French engineering. It is a monument to what happens when something outlasts the people who said it should not exist. Here is where this stops being a history lesson. Think about the things in your own life that you have already quietly decided are temporary. The idea you wrote down and never pursued because someone said it was not practical. The city you keep thinking about moving to but talk yourself out of because the timing is never right. The version of your life that feels too far from where you are now to be worth starting. Most people do not abandon their dreams dramatically. They just keep them on a very short lease. 20 years permitted. Then demolition. The Eiffel Tower was not a visionary project that the world immediately recognized as genius. It was a controversial, expensive, temporary structure that happened to be standing when its moment came. And it was still standing because nobody got around to tearing it down, and because it quietly kept proving itself useful in ways nobody had planned. That is not an accident. That is what persistence without permission looks like. There is a travel writer named Alain de Botton who once wrote that we are drawn to beautiful places not because they are foreign to us but because they represent something we feel we are missing in the lives we are already living. People do not fly to Paris just to photograph metal. They fly there because standing underneath something that survived being called a mistake, watching it lit up against a night sky that has seen 2 centuries of human ambition and doubt and revision, does something to a person. It reminds them that the verdict on a thing is never final while the thing still exists. Over 7 million people stand at the base of that tower every single year. And almost none of them are thinking about the critics who wanted it gone. They are thinking about what they want their own life to look like. Because that is what certain places do. They are not destinations. They are mirrors. The $2 billion problem turned out to be a $2 billion answer. The only question left is what you are currently treating as a problem that might actually be the thing worth building around.